Some people chase fame because they want to be remembered. But Killian Maddox chased it because he was terrified of being no one. And the harder he pushed to become a legend, the faster his life slipped into a nightmare he couldn't escape. What happened to him is a chilling look at what obsession can do when it mixes with loneliness, delusion, and a desperate hunger for recognition. Killian Maddox didn't just want to be strong, he wanted to be iconic. He studied every famous bodybuilder the way other people studied history. Posters covered his walls so completely that you couldn't see the paint underneath. Every morning he woke up believing he was one rep, one pose, one perfect day away from greatness. But the dream was born from pain rather than passion. Since childhood, he'd grown up with violence in the house, losing both parents in the most traumatic way imaginable. Those memories never left him. They lived in his headaches, echoed in the voices he couldn't shut out, and followed him into adulthood. To him, fame wasn't just success. It was the only way to outrun the chaos in his mind. He lived with his grandfather, one of the only people he trusted. But even that small comfort couldn't keep his life stable. Killian's mind drifted between motivation and anger, confidence and paranoia. Fame felt like the only thing that made sense, but chasing that dream pushed him into something far darker. Killian's training wasn't normal. It was punishment disguised as discipline. He forced himself to eat thousands of calories of eggs, meat, and shakes, even when his stomach rejected the food. He injected steroids without hesitation, convinced every needle was bringing him closer to greatness. He treated pain like it was a weakness to crush. If his body resisted, he doubled the weight. If his muscles failed, he pushed until he collapsed. But no matter how big he got, no matter how shredded he tried to be, it never felt like enough. When he stepped on stage at his first big show, everything he worked for fell apart. Under the lights, he tried to show confidence, but his nerves betrayed him. He'd thrown up earlier from stress, and his smile looked forced. The judges barely gave him a second glance. One even nudged him aside as if he were standing in the wrong place. To Killian, that wasn't just rejection. It was humiliation. That moment lodged itself deep in his mind and began twisting everything inside him. And soon his hunger for validation found a new target. Amid the chaos in Killian's life, there was one soft spot. Jessie, a cashier at his supermarket job. She didn't do anything special. She just treated him kindly. And for someone as isolated as Killian, that kindness felt powerful. He changed his shifts just to walk past her. He replayed every word she said to him. He built a fantasy around someone who barely knew him. When he finally worked up the courage to ask her out, his nerves sabotaged everything. He second-guessed himself, assumed she had a boyfriend, and walked away before she could even respond. But when she later called to accept his offer, he felt like the universe was finally turning in his favor. Then came the date. Killian didn't know how to act. He talked about his dead parents, his training nausea, his bodybuilding idols, and his dreams of fame, all in a rapid rush that overwhelmed her. He ordered half the menu, rambled about his muscles, and reacted strangely when he felt embarrassed. Halfway through the conversation, Jessie escaped. She told the waitresses to let him know she wasn't coming back. And when Killian realized she was gone, something cracked inside him. It wasn't just rejection again. It was validation that, once again, nobody saw him the way he wanted to be seen. Online, things weren't any better. He posted a video to introduce himself to the world, only for strangers to tear him apart in the comments. Every insult felt like another door closing, and humiliation only fueled something far more explosive. Killian's anger didn't creep in. It erupted. Whenever he felt disrespected, even slightly, he lashed out. He yelled at workers, threatened strangers, and broke into a store after hours to destroy everything in sight. His body was reaching its limit. Migraines intensified. Voices grew stronger. And during one episode, he cut himself on broken glass without even realizing how badly he was bleeding. The hospital visit should have been the moment that woke him up. Doctors discovered tumors, a dangerous level of organ stress, and warned him that his heart couldn't take the abuse much longer. But Killian refused treatment. He refused to slow down. He refused to face reality. He ran from the hospital and took even more steroids. In his mind, stopping meant failure, and failure meant becoming invisible again. And just when it seemed like things couldn't get worse, the consequences of Killian's rage finally caught up with him. The men he'd threatened earlier ambushed him, beating him until he could barely breathe. His ribs ached, his vision blurred, and his body felt like it was shutting down. But even then, he dragged himself to another competition. He stripped in the parking lot, limping toward the stage. Spectators moved out of his way, sensing something was wrong. When he stepped into the spotlight, the room fell silent. His face was swollen, his skin bruised, and blood smeared across his body. He tried to pose, shaking, crying, fighting for control, but his body finally failed him. He collapsed in front of everyone. A video of the moment spread online. People laughed, mocked, and criticized him again. And when Killian saw how the world viewed him, he spiraled completely. He tore down every poster, destroyed every tape, screamed until his voice broke. He wasn't chasing a dream anymore. He was running from a nightmare of his own making. With nothing left to lose, his obsession took a terrifying turn. Killian's mind shifted from bodybuilding glory to something darker: forced recognition. If the world wouldn't acknowledge him for his physique, they would acknowledge him for fear. He began ordering packages, small at first, until he had enough parts to assemble a full assault rifle. Then came the shotgun, then the pistol, then the ammo. He practiced in secret, imagining the headlines, imagining the attention, imagining his idol finally noticing him. Brad Vanderhorn, the bodybuilding legend he worshipped, became another source of emotional confusion. Killian sent him letters for years. Finally meeting him should have been a dream, but when Brad mocked him behind closed doors, Killian felt betrayed. Parasocial devotion turned into resentment, jealousy, rage. He left voicemails begging for connection, then threatening to make history. He visited nightclubs, posing for strangers, drifting between delusion and despair. His mind convinced him there was only one way left to be remembered, and when he finally stood face to face with his idol, Killian walked into Brad Vanderhorn's show with a rifle hidden in his bag. People around him cheered, screamed, and celebrated the very fame Killian had wanted his entire life. As Brad took center stage, Killian moved closer. He unzipped the bag, wrapped his hands around the weapon, raised it toward the lights. For a few seconds, his entire life narrowed to a single moment. But then something unexpected cut through the anger. Memories, his grandfather's voice, his younger self smiling after training, the brief moments when he felt proud, truly proud, without needing an audience. He lowered the gun, turned away, and walked out of the venue before the police even noticed. He hadn't crossed the line, but he had stepped right up to the edge. But even walking away didn't erase the damage already done. The next morning, Killian dismantled every weapon he owned and abandoned the pieces by the railroad tracks. He went home, flushed all his drugs, and grabbed a camera. He took a single self-portrait in his garage, standing exactly the way he always wanted the world to see him. He hung the picture on his wall like a trophy. In his mind, redemption had already begun. He truly believed that one day people would remember his name, not because of violence, but because of his determination. Whether that belief is hope or pure delusion is something Killian may never understand. But one thing is certain: the line between chasing greatness and losing yourself completely is thinner than most people think. And Killian Maddox walked that line until it almost destroyed him. Killian Maddox never got the fame he spent his entire life chasing. He didn't walk the stage as a champion, and he didn't leave behind a legacy of victories. What he left was something far more unsettling: this raw portrait of a man who shattered himself trying to become larger than life. Even at the end, when he stood in that dim garage staring at the photo he took, he believed he had finally fixed his story. But the film leaves us with a question that never gets answered. Did Killian actually find clarity? Or was he just sinking deeper into the world he created in his head? That final moment is haunting because the movie refuses to give us closure. It leaves Killian frozen between tragedy and possibility, and we're left to decide which side he truly landed on. So now I want your take. Was the ending redemption or another delusion waiting to crack? Let me know in the comments. People read the ending in completely different ways. And if you want more deep dive breakdowns just like this, make sure you subscribe. There's much more on the way.